Hi everyone, Amy here with our midweek update for week 9. I can't believe we are almost to the end and this is our final discussion of the semester. So this will be my final midweek update focusing on an actual discussion. We won't have one next week as you just work to revise your rough drafts based on the feedback you're going to receive in this week's discussion. So I apologize that my updates are a little bit later than usual this week. I did want to go ahead and read through everyone's draft, which I have now done. Some of them were not actual complete drafts, and so I think that's going to be reflected in the struggles you may see or you may find yourself having over the next week. And it may even be reflected in your ultimate grade. However, some of you have rough drafts that are really far along and are in really good shape. So I want to pull some of those examples out, and I'm also going to try to talk about some of the ways that I think everyone can work to improve their drafts overall. To begin, though, I just want to point out that there have been some general questions posted here in the general class discussion topics, especially a couple here from Stephen regarding the argument essay in general. So please do check those out. Some of the information that I'm going to touch on today is in here, and I've provided just a little bit further instruction here. So if you've missed those, make sure you check them out because I talk about sources, I talk about the introduction just a little bit, and I know you all have your topics at this point, but there was a little bit of discussion there as well. Okay. So jumping into this week's discussion, like I said, there are several of you who have drafts that are in relatively good shape, but I want to try to show some examples of things that could be improved that I think are kind of across the board for everyone. So I'll pull out some examples that are kind of indicative of what I think you all should be focusing on in your revisions over the next week or so before the actual final draft of the essay is due. And like I said, I think the last time we had a workshop discussion, I'm going to provide some suggestions for how to improve your drafts here, but I'm not trying to pick on anyone, and in fact I've only chosen to pull out examples of people that I think are definitely on the right track. So if I provide your essay as an example here today, please don't feel like I'm trying to bash you in any way. I actually think you're doing a pretty good job, but there's some things you could improve upon that would help everyone to see, I think. So first of all, here is Emily's essay. Emily does a pretty good job overall with the overall topic, or excuse me, thesis structure and following along with the thesis in body paragraphs, or at least throughout what she's touching on in different parts of the essay. I think there are some issues with how the paragraphs are broken up, Emily, but for the most part you definitely go in order of the things you're saying here in your thesis, and you do a really good job developing your overall central claim in a paragraph before the conclusion. However, the biggest issue I saw in this example, if anyone wants to go and read it, is that Emily is using the surprising reversal structure, but she's kind of muddling the presentation of that counterargument in the actual body of the essay. So for example, her surprising reversal here is that many people believe that the MMR vaccination can result in side effects more severe than the diseases it was designed to eradicate, and then she reverses that into her own thesis. However, foregoing MMR vaccination amongst individuals with no contraindication is detrimental to public health, as vaccine-associated risks are extremely rare and minuscule in comparison to the incidence of complication and fatality associated with the measles itself, and the studies linking the MMR vaccine to autism have been refuted. So those are her two reasons, and then her overall central claim is that this controversy will have devastating consequences if the decisions aren't made properly. So according to this, she should be discussing the counterargument first in the body of her essay, and then after she's discussed the counterargument, her own first main point is going to be about the idea that MMR vaccination, foregoing MMR vaccination is detrimental to public health because the risks are extremely rare in comparison to fatalities associated with the measles. But what you'll see in the body of her essay, if you read it, is that these 2 points are actually lumped together into one paragraph. So it begins right here. There's actually some information here that I think is more background that could go in the introduction instead. This counterargument paragraph should really just focus on the fears that people have that MMR vaccination can result in worse side effects than measles itself. So make sure that that's all you're talking about in this paragraph, because that doesn't really come up until around this part of the discussion. And then somewhere around here is when, Emily, you start to discuss your first main point, which is that the MMR vaccination's risk of fatalities and side effects is way less than the measles. So there needs to be a paragraph break in here somewhere. So I guess my lesson for everyone in the class from this example is that you do need to talk about the alternative point of view in a paragraph right after the introduction if you're using a surprising reversal statement like this in your thesis. However, it should be separate from your first main point. And actually, you don't even need to worry too much about refuting the counterargument in this body paragraph here, because you're basically going to do it with the rest of the essay. So by going then into your first main point with the next paragraph, it provides a direct setup for your refutation of the counterargument you just presented. And that's kind of the beauty of surprising reversal. So make sure that you let that structure work for you by just kind of spending this paragraph right after the intro here, wallowing in the complexity of that alternative point of view, and then just boom, go right into your next first supporting point with a paragraph all its own. Okay, so that would be my big suggestion or lesson to take away from Emily's draft. I also had a lesson to take away from Jason's draft because I thought his was in pretty good shape as well, or at least on the right track in terms of structure. But what Jason's doing here that I think all of us could learn from is, Jason, you are approaching this from a more kind of self-conscious, informal tone as opposed to like a direct, active, more academic, formal tone. So, for example, you say things like, many people feel this, I, however, believe. You can leave yourself out of the thesis. In fact, you can leave yourself out of the entire argument. You are not a strong enough authority, no offense, as an English 121 student, to really make a difference. You're not the expert. That's why I made you cite secondary sources. So just be kind of invisible in the discussion. And like here, Jason says, I want to show how religion can be seen, etc., etc. I also want to explore, etc., etc. And then finally, I plan on showing, etc., etc. So really, all of this needs to be a lot tighter, and I want to see this presented as a direct argument, not so much as an exploration of, Jason, your own ideas, because with the truth-seeking process that's part of argument, the exploration of your ideas should have happened previously, and at this point you should have really arrived at what you are exactly going to be arguing for. And I would also say you don't necessarily want the counterargument to take over this much space in your actual thesis. Definitely you will talk about this counterargument in a paragraph right after the introduction, which hasn't been done here yet, so some of this would need to maybe move down into its own paragraph before your first point. But it would still need to be attached in a just kind of briefer version to the thesis itself. So maybe I will just copy this and paste it here. And then, Jason, you can just take yourself out, as I said before, and just say things like, however, in its most developed and evolved forms, religion can be a cutting-edge, transformative way at looking at the world. And then again, take yourself out of this second point. And you could just attach these into one sentence so it would flow a little more smoothly. So you could say that can be seen as a hierarchical line of development with different stages that transcend and include the previous stage. And then, you know, take it out here again. And this could even be shortened. Let's see. Whoops. I'm just going to take this out and use a comma. So it can be, it can provide a cutting edge and transformative way at looking at the world, because basically you're looking at it as a hierarchical line of development. It offers different states of consciousness, and religion's drive to compassion and inclusion can help people deal with the ecological and political problems that threaten to destroy the world, period. And then I would also say, Jason, if you're going to offer these great things about religion, my question then for some kind of exigency would be just, you know, what then do you think should be done based on this? So what? Do you think people should practice religion? Do you think religion should be supported in any way? Do you think it should be more formally incorporated into our culture? Because you certainly wouldn't want to go too far with it, but then you wouldn't want to confuse your reader as to exactly what you're calling for. So I would say just add a therefore statement, and you can even use a semicolon. People should be open-minded, maybe. Let's just be real vague about it. Incorporate it. And this is very vague in the thesis here, but you would want to discuss then this proposal in an actual paragraph before your conclusion, where you actually, talk about the implementation of this and how you think people should practice religion and to what extent. So let's see. That would be before your conclusion, so you would still need to add a conclusion. And then similarly for your topic sentences, you would just want to take out these references to yourself. I want to talk about blah, blah, blah. I think blah, blah, blah. I believe here again. So just take this out. Finally, religion's ability when in the integral stage to show compassion and inclusion for all people, cultures, and societies is the final reason why people should be open-minded about practicing it, if that is what you ended up with for your overall proposal. So you'll see here, if you can attach your proposal to your topic sentences, this makes your topic sentence a lot more argumentative with your point attached to your thesis, as opposed to exploratory or informative, which is something that I saw in a lot of everyone's drafts as well, which I want to talk about further. So just for Jason's example here, though, I'm just trying to show how, you know, you can have your surprising reversal statement here at the beginning of the thesis and then talk about it in a paragraph right after the intro, and then have each of your individual points laid out, distinctly in the thesis, as well as your overall central claim there at the end, and then each of those things would get paragraphs in the body of the essay with topic sentences that connect to the actual thesis itself. So something like what I did here is the final reason why people should be open-minded, or whatever your central claim would be. So that's my suggestion in terms of how to kind of take yourself out of the argument a little bit more and focus it more just on the relationship between the points themselves and your overall central claim or thesis. And then just in general, to touch on this since it came up so much in Jason's draft, you don't want to provide any personal information about yourself, any first or second person pronouns like I or you. This is a much more formal academic tone that you're writing in, as well as a much more higher standard of evidence, as we've talked about. And so any examples from your own life, any interviews that you've done or people you've talked to, you know, there basically wouldn't even be a reason to talk about yourself, because the argument should be addressed at your academic audience, and as such your audience won't be even in a collective plural first person entity with you. So you wouldn't even need to use a word like we or us or something like that. So just make sure that you're kind of talking more in that third person objective tone so that you can hit on that level of formality that your audience is going to demand. And then I can see here that I'm going to run out of time, but I actually have a couple of more examples that I want to show you. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video and start a second video so we can look at just a couple more examples of how I think some of these particular rough drafts could be reworked, my own revision suggestions, so that maybe you guys can see examples of how you might apply those same changes to your own draft. So I'll be right back with my second video in just a few minutes. Thank you.